Welcome to After the Buzzer Sport Podcast, the podcast where we talk about sports and the African American athlete. Let's go.
Hey guys, this is Raquel Richardson Thomas, and I'm here with Marvin Orange, Mr. Basketball, and Lee Jones, and we're back for another show. And we have a really cool lineup for you today. And I'm going to go over it, and then we're going to jump right in and start having some dialogue. We're going to talk a little bit about Clemson and the Board of Trustees removing John Calhoun's statue. As we all know, he owned slaves, and kind of enjoyed the owning of slaves. So we're going to get into some detail about that and talk about Deshaun Watson's opinions and DeAndre Hopkins' thoughts in reference to having him removed. We're also going to talk about the University of Texas athletes. They band together to pen a letter for the university to change and address some things that have caused racial issues in the past and kind of what they're going to do going forward. USC, the Trojans, Reggie Bush, we're going to talk about them allowing him back into the family. University of Houston, they have halted their volunteer workout because they have 6 players that have tested for coronavirus. I want to get you guys' thoughts on that as we move forward. You know, we're moving into the football season, so this is a big scare across the country. The University of Houston players, I'm wondering what their parents are thinking, in all honesty. Houston coach, the Texans, Bill O'Brien, stated that all of his players will take the knee. Your thoughts on that? Should the NFL sign free agent Antonio Brown to a contract in 2020? That's going to be an interesting topic. If why should they or why should they not? Why do you think the NFL owners being silent but writing checks in response to Black Lives Matter? Why are they writing checks but yet they're not speaking up? And then Kyrie Irving scheduled to lead a conference call while with a large number of NBA players to suggest not to return. We have talked about that. So I think he may get our support overall with the exceptional lead. But we're going to get into some detail, and we're going to wrap it up with a little bit of fun, and we're going to have some lighter conversation about our top 5 NBA players that are currently playing, and also the top 5 shooting guards of all time. So let's get started. First topic for today is Clemson University. John Calhoun, who we all know owned slaves, players have been together to say, hey, we want him removed from the campus. They did a petition, had 20,000 students sign that petition, including Deshaun Watson, who we all know is playing in the NFL, as well as DeAndre Hopkins. What are your thoughts on that, Lee?
Well, I have a couple things. First and foremost, I commend them for doing it. Right? I mean, it's with the environment in today's world. I think them doing it and voting unanimously to remove it is a great thing. I think it's overdue. I think it showed how the students and players can make change by rallying together, and that we've talked about that a couple of times about how their collective voice can add and make some changes on campus. But two things that sort of bothered me a little bit. Why did it take so long? I mean, this is the same man that has been on the building, and the history of him hasn't changed. So why did it take so long? Because that's one thing. And then the other thing for me is, what is the university's motives behind it, right? We all know now it's very blasé to focus on anything that has to do with racism on the positive side. How long will this last? There are other racist names on buildings and racist symbols as far as statues and things on Clemson's campus. Will they remove those? And what is the totality of the program as far as the university going to do as far as supporting Black athletes, racial education and things of that nature? So those are my comments, because let's not do one thing because of the petition of 20,000 students. Let's have a total revamping of the Clemson program. So that's sort of where I stand on it, Raquel, because it was a good deed, but let's see more. And I want it to continue to happen and make sure that Clemson comes into the 21st century.
I agree. I couldn't agree more with that. I think it certainly should have come down. We know that Black athletes really carry that program at this point. It's a complete disrespect for them, their families, to have their kids on that football field, to have their kids sitting in that classroom, to have their kids shooting that ball, knowing that it's a huge part of their history and a part that you frankly celebrate when you have a statue for everyone to see. That's a celebration to me. So I agree with you 100%. It took too long. I'm glad that it's done, but it took entirely too long for it to get done. Marv, what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I agree with both of you. I think it's it's a great gesture, and I'm glad that it went over unanimously and they decided to do it so quickly. It's kind of an indication of saying, okay, this is maybe who we were, but this is an indication of where we want to go. So I do commend them for that. But I don't know how many of you have ever been to a Clemson football game, and the old Fort Mill plantation that kind of looks over the stadium, which is kind of ironic. The players, they run down the hill, they go onto the football field. They're playing on a football field that is an old slave plantation that's overlooked by the Fort Mill House that they still do tours on, and they still do all these kind of different things and gain revenue from a history that we all know is not great. And you're making revenue, and these kids are playing, black and brown kids are playing on a football stadium, and they can't get paid. They're entertaining the masses. They're being extorted for their skills, but they're playing an old slave plantation field, which has always been kind of ironic to me, but I don't know if people really realize some of the history about Clemson. I think it took so long because only 6% of the 6% of the population at Clemson, your students, are black. Yeah. I mean, it's a very small percentage of your student population. So it's a case of nobody said anything, no harm, no foul, business as usual, come out here, make us money, entertain us. And period. That's how it's been. I do think that this is what protest gets you. It helps you to bring education to something that's going on. I think a lot of people didn't know this about Clemson. I think that having the board of trustees and the people in charge of making this decision so quickly shows you exactly what protesting, coming together, being a voice, and let's not be mistaken. Deshaun Watson and who's the other guy? I can't quite remember.
DeAndre Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, they were the catalyst to this. Trust me. If they weren't at the forefront of trying to bring this down, this wouldn't have happened. So I do commend them. It shows us kind of where they want to go. So I don't want to make light of that. So let's just see kind of what happens. I agree with you, Lito. There needs to be some substantive action from this, but it's the right direction.
So I'll say this, one of the things I think we've talked about, and we've talked about a great deal, is how important is it for our voices to be heard. So we protest, we riot, but it's imperative that we make our demands. We can protest and riot, but if we do that without having a set group of demands that we want them to meet, then it's pointless. Then I think, make no doubt about it, Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins certainly were the leaders of this. And we know Clemson, they don't want to lose those dollars. They don't want to ruin their reputation when it comes to, what could these kids say? They played in the program. So I'm sure during their time, they've experienced something, right? And you don't want someone with that type of platform to have a conversation about their experience. So I tell you what, I won't have that conversation about my real experiences, some that weren't flattering, if you take this thing down, because it's disrespectful. So I think Clemson did a good job by its students. And with 6% of that population being African American, I'm sure 5% of those African Americans play sports.
Pretty much.
So we know that the sport, athletics, really, that's how the school makes money. So when you have almost 100% of your Black population, the 100% that's generating dollars, you have to hear them. You have to meet their demands, or else. And Clemson doesn't want to do that. And I do commend Clemson for taking it down as fast as they did once the conversation came up, but it should have come down before now. Yeah. Period.
Two quick things. There's another building named after a gentleman named Pittman, right? Mm-hmm. And this guy said that he supported public lynchings, right?
Yeah.
That they voted for Calhoun to be removed, but then someone else said, "Well, what about Pittman?" They threw that on the table and got him out of there. So for me, it's like they're colorblind to the history that's on. They're not colorblind. They know the history, but they were blind to this issue. As now that they're bringing it up, they're acting swiftly. Marv, I did not know though that they were doing tours on the man's house.
Yeah. You can take tours.
Yeah, all of that tells me that until the protests happened, they were not even enlightened by what was going on right under their nose, and the fact that when you look at the revenue that football is bringing in, they had to do something. So
right. So University of Texas is next, guys. University of Texas, they band together to write a letter stating they needed certain things changed, right? In relation to racial things that happened in the past and things that are still happening currently. The athletes call for a renaming of some buildings, right? Some of the stuff that's going on at Clemson, replacing some statues, inclusion of racism in their education. We know that Black history has been removed from a lot of the schools, almost every school in the state of South Carolina. We don't teach Black history anymore, but we are still teaching white history. We are still teaching the white American history, but we don't teach the Black American history. So a huge part of who we are is being taken out of the school system. So for the athletes at the University of Texas to say, hey, we need that to be included again in our education, I think is huge, especially for incoming freshmen. It is imperative, in my opinion. And then the creation of outreach programs in the inner city. We know that in the inner cities is where we have most of our issues with brown and Black babies, where we need the most attention for brown and Black babies. So what are your thoughts, Marv, on what's going on at the University of Texas?
I love it. And this is kind of what we talked about before with why I was so disappointed with Dabo. Tom Herman, the coach at Texas, he kind of set the blueprint for his players. When he came out and said what he said, you cheer them every weekend. They're your best friends on Saturdays, but you won't let them date your daughter, or you won't give them that job. Having a head football coach at Texas who's a white man who's making a lot of money off the backs of these kids, that was a bold statement for him to make. And what it did was it emboldened his players. His players came out and said, you know what? Our coach has our back. He wasn't scared about making a statement about that. And we all know what happened with Charlie Strong at Texas. We're not going to kind of go into that. But it allowed his players to feel like they had some voice and some control in what happens with them. And let's make no mistake about this. Like, players are realizing that maybe it doesn't control my narrative now, but the University of Texas and boosters all realize that this directly affects recruiting. This directly affects how Texas is going to look in 10 years. And if we don't kind of say, all right, we need to look at this, we need to maybe change the way we do things, we know now that players are saying we have a lot more power than we've had before. And I think it's great, but I do want to give Tom Herman a lot of credit because he was the person who kind of started this and allowed his players to be able to have a voice and feel like it was okay to be heard and talk about the things that they don't get. I was a student at the University of Alabama, and, when you're young, you're kind of ignorant to these things. I remember walking into one of the places we play basketball, and, some of my former teammates can say this. They have a plaque up where George Wallace stood, and he wouldn't let the African Americans in at the University of Alabama. And to be young and not to understand what that really meant goes to what they're talking about, how we're not taught, how we don't know our history, how we're not taught some of the things in college that are really profound in the moment that we should know about. So I love the direction that they're going with this. I commend the University of Texas, also their coach. So I'm all on board for this. I think it will bring some change.
Yeah. Lee, what are your thoughts on what's going on at the University of Texas with the demands that the student athletes are making for change in relation to the riots and the protesting that's going on around the country?
Yeah, the one thing, it wasn't just football players. It was students from all across all of the athletic programs, which is a great thing that they band together. And as we've been talking about over the last few weeks, the collective voice is huge. I wasn't a big Tom Herman fan, Raquel and Mar, because of the way they did Charlie Strong and the courting of Tom Herman. And Marv, you touched on it, but didn't give Charlie Strong a chance. He came in and he cleaned up the academic part of Texas, But the wins, they didn't give him that 5 years that most coaches get. So I never was a big Tom Herman fan. But when I read his letter, Marv, it changed my viewpoint of him. And so I give him kudos for that. Most coaches won't allow Dabo. They don't really allow their players to get involved in social issues on these campuses. And you know this, Marv, by being at University of Alabama, because they want to keep it tight. They don't want them to branch out into the public. So I commend those players, and I commend Tom Herman for giving them a voice. And by those players saying that they won't participate in any recruiting activities for new incoming athletes coming in or any events with the boosters and the public, that sends a huge message. That's why I've always said, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, about college athletes unionizing, because they have tremendous power in this economic engine that's called college football or college basketball, and they can create change by doing this. And Raquel, you talked about, education programs for incoming freshmen, not only black but white, so they can understand the history of racism in all of America. But listen to the song, "The Eyes of Texas Are Upon You." They want that as well, because these are racist songs, racist symbols, and I commend those young athletes for their voice. I hope that they carry on and they make their voice heard. I know the athletic director is talking about he wants to meet with them and wants to talk, because let's be clear. If those players 1 week of saying they're going to protest and not play, think of that whole disruption to the entire economic system for the University of Texas. So I commend them for writing that letter.
Yeah, and
that's
Lee,
how we
just to
affect it.
And Lee, just to kind of piggyback off real quick, Raquel, I think the key to that whole piece was the recruiting part. I'm not participating in any recruiting efforts for the University of Texas. That is your economic baseline when it comes to University of Texas and sports. And that also directly affects enrollments. If your team is not good, then students don't want to come to school there because they want to be part of winning sports franchises. In Texas, we all know what they represent. Students want to come and be part of that. And if your team is terrible, students don't come. Your enrollments drop. Therefore, that affects the bottom line. So for me, that was a real key piece when student athletes said, I'm not going to get involved with the recruiting aspect of it. That's a big piece.
We know that when we start talking dollars and cents, that's when white America wakes up. When you affect the economics of their businesses, when you affect the dollars, the bottom line, when you affect their bottom lines, we know that that's when they hear us the most. And I think if we want to do this thing and do it fast, we have to take a stance, and that stance has to be from an economic standpoint. When we affect their dollars, they listen, because at the end of the day, and I've said this last week and a week before, America was built on the backs of Blacks. Well, so are sports. We are the horses across the board. I don't care what sport you look at. We are the horses, and without us, it doesn't work. So for athletes to take a stance and really affect the bottom line of these universities, of these professional teams, that is how we really get change and get it fast. We can protest, which I'm all for the protest. I'm in 100% agreement with all the protests. But if we really want to change the dynamics of what's going on in our country, we have to affect their dollars and affect their bottom line. And when we do that, we will get the change that we need and desire. Going right into USB.
Can I ask Marvin a question so he can share with the audience? Marvin, what did your coaches tell you while you were on campus when you were at the University of Alabama about bringing up social issues and getting involved in that type of thing when you were on campus at the University of Alabama? I'm curious about that.
Well, it was, I mean, we all knew that it was kind of said, but not said, but said, that's something that we don't get involved in. You represent the university, and doing anything that's going to represent the university in a negative light, which is what they would see it as, is we don't get involved in. We want to keep everything in house. And that's what we were always taught. That's what we were always kind of said to do. So it was an unspoken thing that this is just something you don't get into because you don't want to also affect the way people see you. That's how it was always came across. Like, you don't want to say too much to have somebody, it might be your fan today, but might not be your fan tomorrow because of something you said and the way you feel. So we were always towing that line to kind of be the best representation of not yourself, but the University of Alabama. That's what it was always about. So that's why this is big to me. This is a change.
Yeah, I just wanted you to share your perspective because I know you had it. And hey, call in. We got an open line. We want to hear from you. Take it.
That's right. That's right.
Also,
Lee,
we actually have.
Call in. We are wide open for you guys to join in on the conversation. Our call-in number is posted so that you guys can see it, and I'll give it to you really quick. 803-570-5031. Call in, ask us any questions. Also, we're live on our social media sites, so if you ask questions there, we will also answer your questions.
We actually have
in Reggie Bush.
Before we go there, we actually have a comment from Facebook. It's from Poppy Griggs, and she says, "Lee, I am curious to hear your opinion on Coach Pete Carroll about Cap. He came out and said he regretted not signing Cap."
I'll say this. I think that is disingenuous at best. 4 years later, when you now say you would have signed Cap as opposed to signing him then, we all knew at the time that Cap was there, that he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And for Pete Carroll to be a revisionist now and to say, I regret it, well, you certainly, and the fact that Cap fit what the Seahawks did to a T as far as running it and could have been a great backup to Russell Wilson. I just find it just really disrespectful, to be honest with you. Don't talk about then, talk about now, Pete Carroll. You still have the opportunity to sign Cap right now. So stop all that BS and let's get Cap on the team. That's what I think. And I don't want to hear about what you could have done last 4 years ago or what you regret. Make it right now. That's what I would say. I don't know, Raquel, or you and Marvin, y'all have to say.
I agree. He made a huge mistake by not signing Cap. And instead of saying what you regret, just make it right. Just do it right now. You still have today. You had yesterday. You had the day before. The day you made the comment, you should have been prepared to offer him a job, period. Or shut up. Shut up. Be quiet.
Absolutely.
Shut up.
Absolutely.
And actually, we also have a caller on the line.
Okay.
All right, caller, state your name.
Yes, it's Tony.
And
hey, Tony.
Hey, Tony, how you doing?
Yes, how's it going, Brother Lee?
I'm doing good. I'm glad you called back. I miss you, man. I miss you.
Yeah, I miss you too. I'm a little under the weather today, Lee, but I want you to, since you have Marvin there and Raquel, ask them if they concur with, I said it was ludicrous what you asked me last week about black athletes ignoring Division I schools and go to historical black universities. Just get their opinion on that.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, stay on the line, Tony, because I want to get the feedback. So, Marvin and Raquel, last week.
I said it was ludicrous what you asked me.
Tony, is it possible for you to turn down the device that you're viewing the show on, please?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
So last week, Wednesday, Tony called in and he was talking about, we had a topic, we talked about a topic about, is it time for black athletes to start to look at migrating away from historically white colleges and look at some of the black colleges. Tony thought it was ludicrous. Let me say this, Tony, and I'm going to let them talk about it in just a moment. But understand one thing from my perspective is, the NBA and Marv is a basketball person, so I'm curious to hear his comments. It's waiting for the top athletes. In 2 years, they'll be able to go to the NBA straight from high school. But if they do decide to go 1 year in college, going to a historically black college where ESPN will follow, where, let's say, and I brought up Bronny James, Marv, if he wants to choose a black college, just think about the power that LeBron and Nike yields for Bronny playing at a historically black college. And I'm saying those dollars and that revenue stream will go away from these traditional schools and now help build the HBC brand. Now, Tony said that's ludicrous and ridiculous. So I'm going to turn it over to you and Raquel because he wants to hear what y'all have to say.
So I'll say this. I think, again, back to economics and power, if we affect the bottom line of these traditionally white colleges, they will listen. But this is the deal. The same things that we have done for white colleges and sports, we can do for our own colleges. The same power we have given white colleges, we can give that same power to Black colleges. We can not only increase the athletic programs and generate money, we are talking about bringing in the best professors to educate our kids even better. We're talking about bringing in the best research. We're talking about having the best science labs. Let's not forget, Tony, Black engineers come from Black colleges. If you meet 20 Black engineers, ask them where they went to undergrad. Black doctors, undergrad, ask them where they went. So we are still producing some of the best people in our country through HBCUs. And if we take those Black athletes that generate the millions and billions of dollars that they generate for predominantly white schools, we put our HBCUs at a power that simply changes the dynamic of who we are in this country. Yeah. It's just like building Black Wall Street again, brother. It's just like building Black Wall Street. That's how we start the process.
I would like to hear Marvin. I'd like to hear Marvin's opinion on that.
Marvin.
Yeah, you know what? I really think Raquel hit it on the head. And I wish I could say more, but she eloquently stated it. It is about changing the landscape of college sports, and the landscape shifting means that we do hire better professors. We do build new buildings. We're able to recruit the best students to come to our schools. So that's what we're talking about, but sports is the catalyst to all that because it does produce so much money in TV rights and likeness and all the things that these universities get that the athletes don't get to see. Those are the things that will change the landscape of college sports. It's not going to stop you from making it to the NBA. I mean, the NCAA is a farm league. It's a farm league for the NBA now, as is. It doesn't matter where you play. They're going to find you. If you're good, you're going to make it. Scottie Pippen came from Central Arkansas, one of the top 50 players in the world. I mean, we can go on and on about all the Black players that played in the NBA from schools nobody ever heard of.
Steph Curry, Michael Davidson.
Well, that's right. I mean, going back to what Raquel said, and also you, Marvin, I dare you to name any Black athlete, any movement that has started that trend. I initially said it was ludicrous, and it sounds good theory-wise. You just said that, but can you give me an example of where it has been any push towards that? Just one example.
Tony, let me say this, and you know this as well as I do because you lived it. Prior to 1965, 66, all of the NBA came from HBC schools. You know that as well as I do. Now, modern basketball, no, because the white schools have came in and usurped all of the talent.
Because of economics, Marvin, you said that you are a capitalist, and that's the reason. That's why that idea of Black athletes going to historical Black colleges, that doesn't have any fuel. That doesn't have a platform. You've never heard any Black athlete, any Black politician discuss that.
Well, we have to create it. We have to start the process.
We have
one kid right now that's one of the top players in the country for basketball saying he is considering going to HBCU. Just like you started your bank account, we have to start it. When you started your bank account, you didn't start it with $1 million, you built it. So the same thing for sports and Black athletes, we have to start somewhere. So we build the platform. We have to build it. It's not there yet, but we can build it. We do have one kid right now. We have one kid right now that's one of the top players in the country, and I know Lee knows his name. What's his name, Lee?
His name is his last name is Williams.
I think it's Mikey Williams.
Yes, Mikey Williams.
That sounds good, but just take the millions of dollars that the Black athletes getting now. Be smarter with it and navigate this maze we're in, and we can do more for the Black community, Black colleges from that level with the money, not attempting what adjectives do I want to use? Bob Hayes went to Florida A&M. Bob Hayes wouldn't even be considered for Florida A&M today because the economics of the game has changed. The economics of the game has changed. And you went back to
Alcorn State. Jerry Rice went to Mississippi Valley State.
Right.
We're not talking about
absolutely.
You're talking about the end result. We're talking about as they migrate, because Marv made a great point. The NBA identifies players that are going to make it to the NBA when they're 15 years old. So you follow them through the system. It doesn't matter where they go. That's why players are choosing the G League now. Where they go is not as important as how they're developing in their skill set. But they're going to follow them regardless. So we're not looking at the
but I'll tell you what, guys, they spent a lot of time on this question, so I'm going to have Tony give his closing remarks because we need to move on to the next topic. So, Tony, you've got our opinion across the board. We all feel the same. I'm going to let you close out and tell us your thoughts.
Don't be a stranger, man. Call back. You bring the heat. I get the feeling when you call, Tony.
I would just like, thank you, Lee. I would just like you to enlighten me to tell me any publication I can go to or any black athlete that you know of that has broached that question.
Research Mikey Williams. Research Mikey Williams.
Mikey Williams. Who's Mikey Williams?
Research it. Google it. Guys, we got to move to the next topic.
He's the number one 15-year-old player in the country, Tony. Google him.
Yeah, I'm talking about established black athletes that has the wherewithal to affect change. I'm not talking about a kid that you don't know if because he's highly recruited because he's ranked number one now. That's not the end result.
But that's the whole point. The point is that this young man is a number one high school basketball player in the nation. Where he decides to go to school is going to be national news, okay?
Correct.
If he decided to go to an HBCU school, you know what's going to follow him there? Television contracts that's going to go to that school. Endorsement contracts that are going to go there.
That sounds good, Lee.
That's how these universities make money. Let's make no mistake about it. I played Division I college basketball. I know how this works. You know why we all went to D1 schools? The University of Alabama, South Carolina, Arizona. Because players getting paid. Right. I'm going to just say it, okay? Players are getting paid to go where they go. They are dictating where guys go, all right? So HBCUs are already at a disadvantage because they can't do that because they don't have their alumni support, the boosters, all the things that these traditionally white universities have to be able to get these poor, mostly underprivileged, people who want to change their economic status, their family's economic status. They don't have the ability to do that for these kids. But if you can have one or two that can change that landscape, that can go and give one HBCU the power to be on television every day, every time they have a game, go to the NCAA tournament like Steph Curry did, make a deep run on the back of his talents like Carmelo did for Syracuse. Are you telling me that doesn't change the landscape of college sports and how it works?
Hey guys, we can talk about
give an example of that, Marvin. You can't give an example of that.
We're at the end of this question. We got to disconnect and go to the next topic. We giving you Mikey Williams. You can research him. He's a player that you can look up. So let's move on, guys.
And actually, Raquel, we have another caller waiting.
So, guys, we got to limit each call to 1 minute. So if you can keep time on that. Hi from Texas.
Go ahead, caller. You on with After the Buzzers. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Vincent.
Vincent.
Hey, how are you guys doing? I love your show.
Good. Thank you.
I have to comment on that last topic because I'm a proud HBCU graduate from Southern University, an engineer at that.
Hey, I told you.
You're right. And I agree with everything that you guys said. In fact, today, the NBA really doesn't look at the level of talent anyway. I mean, they have these young kids slotted from high school. So if you take a student and they're already slotted for the NBA, so whether they go and play at an HBCU or whether they play at Kentucky or they play overseas, like look at LaMelo Ball, they're already slotted. But also, I will challenge the caller that called in, and I'm going to tell him, look up the name Ricky Weeks. Ricky Weeks, back about 17 years ago, Ricky Weeks, a baseball player at Southern University, was potentially going to be the number one player taken in the baseball draft. He ended up going, I think, number 3 overall. Mm-hmm. He was in the same draft with Prince Fielder. Yep. So if you look at that, Southern University, Ricky Weeks was considered the number one player, ended up going about number 3 overall from Southern University. So the bottom line is, as you all mentioned, professional leagues are going to find you if you have the talent, regardless of where you play. And if you are that good, the TV contracts and the sponsors and everyone else will follow you. They're going to come and follow you. So that is the reality of today. I love you. That's where we live in. It is so true. So
I love you too, man. I love you too.
Look, I love you guys. I love your show, and this was one that was near and dear to me. So I wanted to call in and contribute. Thank you. I'll listen offline.
Thanks, bro. We appreciate you.
HBCU as well.
And that's the whole point, though. And I'm glad that he brought that up. Like these kids are coined from 15 years old as can't miss, right? Mm-hmm. So it don't really matter where they go to school because they're gonna get drafted, whether it's Major League Baseball, whether it's the NBA. You know, football I understand from a maturity standpoint, but these kids have been coined since 15 years old to be in the NBA, a top 10 pick. So I don't care where they go to school. Yeah. But if they want to go somewhere and build a brand, and if they want to go somewhere and put a school on their back and put them through the NCAA tourney and give revenue to that school that's going to manifest into buildings and education and teachers, and then that's where, Raquel, like you always say, we start changing the landscape of how this works in the bottom line, because once you hit those pockets, everything changes.
That's right.
So you only need a couple. That's all you need.
The experience for the young black player, and for me, having been on an HBC campus and that experience, and with all that's going on in the education, and that's why I'm so big on grabbing these kids when they're younger, Marvin, teaching them and letting them know their history, so they can then start to migrate to these HBCs. Because let's face it. If a Bronny James is as good as advertised, he's only going to be there for one semester. You know, after March, he's going to the NBA. But his experience, and if Bronny goes with LeBron and Nike, the push and ESPN, look how much money you generate from. Not only
you shift the diet, you shift the whole atmosphere with just that one player. If that happens, then it's going to happen. It will be the trend, number one. And once the trend is set, we'll be golden. But we spent too much time on this topic, guys. We got to move on. We're going to move on to USC. USC and Reggie Bush. They have now allowed Reggie back into the family. I don't have a lot of thoughts on this. I think if I were Reggie, I would probably say to hell with them at this point. 10 years is too long. And why now is my question to the Trojans. Why now? What do you want from him? What do you need from him? Because it's obviously something that USC needs from Reggie. Otherwise, his ass would still be on the sideline year 11, 12, and 13. And that's my opinion. Marv, you go ahead and tell us what you think. And we're going to let Lee close this one out.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't really care. You know, again, this is the NCAA and the hypocrisy of the NCAA at its finest. You know, Reggie Bush, you're going to ban him for 10 years for allegedly getting a payment for a house and some of the stuff that he did. I mean, come on, man. You can go to any college program in the nation that wins football games or basketball games. You can find a Reggie Bush on every campus. So let's just stop this. And the ban him for 10 years for taking a little bit of money and to take his Heisman Trophy, although that Heisman really in his, I think it's Vince Young's. But,
Vince Young's got a Heisman that year. I agree with that 125%.
Let's agree on something every now and then, Mark.
Yeah, but I mean, this is just silly. I mean, it's good for Reggie Bush because I know he's wanted to be back in the USC family, and he's made that pretty well known. But I mean, the NCAA, just the hypocrisy and what they did to him for 10 years, it's just ludicrous.
We'll see very soon why they have given him the pleasure of being a part of the family again. Trust me, we're going to see within the next 12 months why he is there. You will see him doing something for USC. You will see his face publicizing something. Lee, close us out on this topic. Give us your thoughts.
And I'll be brief, Raquel, because I know we got some other great topics. Two things. Of course they want him to. They want to help with the recruiting. USC has dropped off in football, and who better to go and talk to a young, especially they're losing a lot of players on the West Coast as far as recruiting, especially quarterbacks, athletes. They're losing that. So bringing Reggie Bush back into the fold will help that. A couple other points I want to make very quickly. One, it was an NCAA thing, not so much a USC thing. They made them do that and bringing him back. They're excited for him to come back because it's going to help their recruiting. But I'll say this about Reggie. Reggie made a comment. You know me, Marv. I hold a grudge. You know me. Reggie made a comment a couple of weeks ago about, I don't know if athletes should be paid and all that. Come on, Reggie.
You do know. You got paid.
Come to the light. Absolutely.
He on TV now, though. He got to make that comment. He on TV.
You put it out there, Reggie. Stop that foolishness. And you got paid. Your family got set up in the house.
That's right.
Stop that BS and come clean. But I do think that USC wants to use Reggie to help build that program because Clay Helton is on his last legs. If he don't win this year, he's out, and he knows that. That's why they're trying to get him back.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to go to the University of Houston. They had to stop their volunteer workouts because we have six student athletes that tested positive for COVID-19. What are your thoughts on this upcoming season? Is it worth what could possibly happen? Here we are early. Football season really hasn't even begun yet, and we have players that are practicing, that have volunteered to practice, but they have 6 players with the coronavirus, COVID-19. What does that mean? What needs to happen next? And I'm gonna let you go with this, Lee, first. Tell us your thoughts in reference to COVID-19 and our college athletes.
Well, a couple things. Houston made a tactical mistake because, first of all, these are athletes across all sports, not just football, but across all sports. But Houston made a tactical mistake because they didn't test them coming in the door, right? So they didn't do the COVID-19 tests when they were coming in to identify these kids. So that's the first thing that the University of Houston, I don't know if they were being cheap, didn't have access to the test or whatever the case may be, but their protocol is bad. So by their protocol being bad, first they need to fix that. Look, for me, and I'm just going to be honest, this engine is going to move down the track, okay? No matter what we think of this COVID-19 situation, college sports, in my opinion, is going to happen. And so I think halting it is good so that they can get under control their testing, their quarantine policy, how they want to address students when they test positive, because they made those tactical errors and that cost them. And it shines a bad light on them. But I do think very quickly you'll see them put out a protocol for testing and how they want to go forward. And I think
we have a call, Lee.
We have a call? How it affects us going forward as far as the college football season, I think college football is going to play. And I think some areas may play before others, but I think it's going to happen, Raquel. So it's sad that the University of Houston took the cheap route and then test accordingly. That's why they got in trouble, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Caller, state your name. You are on the air with After the Buzzers.
Yeah, Gerald Britt.
Hi, Gerald. How are you?
All right. How you doing?
Wonderful.
How y'all doing? Glad y'all took my call.
Doing good.
I just had a couple questions I wanted to ask. What do you think about Roger Goodell? Y'all think he's fair? And one other question, I'm gonna make it quick because I know y'all rushing us off the phone. But
you ain't rushing off the phone. Who's talking, man? What are you talking about?
And does y'all think that Jerry Jones? I'm not that I'm prejudiced or racist or nothing like that, but I get a lot of my friends telling me that they think Jerry Jones is prejudiced, so, and that affects our team. So just those 2 questions right there.
The Cowboy fan here is Lee. So Lee, you take it.
We're gonna let the Cowboy man take this. Go ahead, Cowboy man.
Let me say this. Let me say a couple things. I think I'll get the Roger Goodell question very quickly. Roger Goodell works for the owners, right? He makes $44 million a year. He's paid by the owners. He works for the owners. So Roger Goodell could want all of the social justice issues in the world to happen. But ultimately, he has only so much power. I love the statement that he put out. I think he didn't contact all of the owners. He contacted the major, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 owners that he needed to. But I don't think Roger Goodell is racist. I think the NFL is racist, and he has to make sure that he is doing the bidding of the other owners that are in the league who he works for. So I think Roger Goodell only has so much power until he decides, look, I'm going to put it out there, and if they remove me, I've done my job, and this is the point. If I leave as commissioner, I can be looked back on in history and say I changed the racial landscape of the NFL. When he gets to that point, I think he will do some things outside of the box on where the owners are directing him to. Jerry Jones, I'm a Cowboy fan. Let me throw it out there. Those that know me know. I love the Dallas Cowboys. Hell, I like Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is a Trump supporter. We know this. So his mindset is going to follow Donald Trump. Right, and the things that Donald Trump believes in. Jerry doesn't want, as you remember last year, Jerry kneeled with the players, but they did it prior to the national anthem, right? Mm-hmm. So is Jerry Jones racist? I don't think Jerry Jones is racist. I think Jerry Jones aligns with Trump's economic viewpoints. I think that's him being a capitalist. I think he aligns with that. I don't feel that he's racist because he's done a lot for African-American players over the years that he's worked for, right? So I don't believe he's a racist. I believe he aligns with the Trump viewpoints on capitalism and economics, and those two, they can't marry each other, so you're going to get that. Jerry Jones' silence on this issue says a lot as far as his views towards how Donald Trump wants the NFL to react, in my opinion. Yeah. Hope I answered your question, girl.
Okay.
Y'all doing a great job. Thank you. Yeah, you did. And y'all are doing a great job. Y'all doing a great job. Brother.
Thank you, Gerald.
Thank y'all.
All right, guys. So let's jump into Houston.
Can I add one thing about this COVID thing?
Absolutely, Marv, please.
You know, and I know, Lee, you were talking about Houston and just kind of doing a bad job about how they did it. But if you go to University of Alabama, they have 5 players now that have tested positive. Right. And Clemson has a couple, and we know they're on the forefront of this. I mean, there is no botching this when it comes to Nick Saban. Here's my concern about the season. Is not even in these voluntary workouts or the things that are going on. What happens when the season starts, right? What happens when you get to week 2 or 3 and your big SEC, ACC games start to play? In the beginning of that week, you got 4 of your best players that test positive for COVID-19, right? What we know they can't play. We know they got to be quarantined, but also everybody else they've been in contact with has to be. So how do you handle that? How do you handle that from a team perspective? Because now you're going to be out 4 of your best players. Everybody they've been around has to get quarantined as well. How do you move forward playing a season when you know every week you're going to be dealing with guys that test positive, that won't be able to play, affecting potentially draft stock, how well of a product you put out on the field? Because if you're playing with 2nd and 3rd tier players, I don't want to watch that. I mean, you know, I was a college athlete, and the people who are behind us, it's really not the same level. I don't want to see that stuff. So that's something I haven't heard a plan on. How do you deal with the reoccurring effects of people testing positive during the season? It's going to happen. And I've heard no plan on how they're going to deal with what goes on with that.
No, that's true. I think the commitment to daily testing, to me, is the key in all of that. They're going to have to test daily and sometimes even multiple times in the day to keep players and remove them very quickly. I know the University of Oklahoma has set up a totally different dormitory for those test positive. They're going to put them in that dormitory. The doctors will take care of them, but it's the testing that'll drive that, because you're right. And the other thing that we have to be careful of, Mark, let's say the quarterback. Let's say your boy Trevor Lawrence tests positive.
Test positive.
They're playing Florida State this week.
Right.
You let him play that game because you want the victory.
Right.
The medical team have the integrity to say, look, Trevor tested positive. He has to get out of there. Those type of protocols and the answers for that are the things that I agree with you is going to have to be written out very stringently and have some repercussions for things that go outside that box. But the testing is going to be huge, and the amount of testing, I think, is going to be.
Yeah, and even going to the playoff football committee. How they start to manage how good teams are. If you're losing some of your top players on a week in, week out basis, and then you start talking about the college football playoff, how do you manage that?
Yeah.
How do you effectively?
I think you guys are thinking definitely from a male perspective at this point.
Well, let's get the female perspective.
Let's
get the female perspective.
At the end of the day,
because your son is playing and mama.
That's right. Because the reality of this thing is, guys, we know that it's killing a lot of people, and we know that it's predominantly killing African Americans.
Yeah.
And as a parent, you have to say, okay, yeah, I want my son to play in this big game because it could change his whole life. But also, if he dies, you know, the respiratory issues with COVID alone. So you're running up and down a football field. You already have respiratory issues. We're going to lose some kids, guys.
Man,
you know, and some of these kids may be physically fit, but it doesn't mean they're healthy. So at the end of the day, I think if they need to be tested when they get on campus, they need to be tested.
I agree.
You know, they need to be tested on a daily basis. I agree with that. But is it worth what could possibly happen? Is it worth possibly losing one of these kids? And that is the perspective of a mother. That is the perspective of a woman, period. Is it worth? We know what could happen. We know that we could lose them. Not for a game, but for life. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Would you let your son play, Lee? Would you let your son play, Marv? And guys, you have to have a human something right now. Yes, I want to see football. Yes, I want to see college football. I want to see the NFL. But do I want a player to lose their life and take this risk is what we have to talk about.
Go ahead, Mama. I know Mama was gonna put us in check, Marv.
Nah, I mean, she makes a
caller. I think Lamadre, do we have a caller?
Yes, we do. Okay. All right, we're about to admit it now. Caller, state your name. You are on with After the Buzzers.
Hey guys, this is Chris. How's everybody doing?
Hey, Chris.
Hey guys. Hey, I couldn't hear some of it, but I know Lee and Marvin started talking about the Houston situation.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to give you guys some info and what's going to be a struggle, you know, from what I do with the junior colleges. A lot of the teams that have to bus, like up here in Pennsylvania, a lot of the bus companies are saying only 15 people on a 55 passenger bus.
Oh,
so
there you go.
And so we were talking, you know, we may have to cancel some away games because, you know, you're looking at 80 kids traveling. I mean, what's that? Seven buses? You know, so that's something that when I heard you guys talking about that, it prompted me to call in. That's going to be travel is going to be a real issue for teams that can't afford to fly. And, you know, I don't even know if you want to fly, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Can I ask you a question, Chris?
Yeah.
What is your college talking about as far as testing too? That's the other big thing. So what conversations have y'all had? And for those of you who don't know, Chris is the sports information director for Lackawanna Junior College, one of the top junior colleges in the country. Chris, what is your college saying about testing? If you enlighten our audience.
Yeah, they're going to be testing every practice, if I'm correct, and games. And what we've been told too, guys, is right now in Pennsylvania, you can have games, but there'll be no fans.
Right.
So, so that's what I mean. Again, that could change because a lot of counties are going into the green next week. But right now, that's what they're saying to us. But they will be testing, and guys, we're actually having to work with we have a company that we have our athletic trainers through, and they're working through a process right now to bring when these kids come in. We're actually going to be bringing our football team in at the end of July, so it's going to be interesting. But they will be doing the temperature checks and a lot of that stuff. And I guess there's a minimum or threshold that you can't go over. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I read the Houston thing today. But I just want to share that with you guys. Some other issues with travel and stuff like that. And one other thing, not only football, but I mean, we have soccer, volleyball. So some of those Olympic sports, people don't think about, but there's a lot of stuff going on. It's going to be interesting.
Thank you, Chris, so much.
I just doing a great job. I just wanted to share that with you, and you guys take care, and I'll call in again.
Thank you.
Hey, for those that don't know, Chris is my twin. He's just a little lighter than me. That's all.
So this is the deal, and to piggyback off of what Chris just said, guys, same thing. If it was your kid, is it worth it? You're talking about a 55-passenger bus and only 15 kids could get on. So they know the severity of what we're going through. So is it even worth having a football season to risk these young people's lives?
And Raquel, that's a good point.
I agree with you. The big-time programs, the Clemsons, the Alabamas, all of those, first of all, they're going to fly. But they would say, because of the economic structure of the money that they're getting from radio and TV and all this, $155, $60 million of revenue. The question is, and you stated very correctly, you as a parent talking about your son, is it worth it? It's certainly going to be worth it to these major Power 5 colleges. But the question is, would you as a mama say, no, baby, I don't want you to play no matter what they're putting in place? And that's only a question that a mom can answer.
And actually, there is a comment from Facebook.
Too.
There's
a father too.
You know me, listen, put all tape around.
You better put a mask on and play.
Hey, now go ahead, Marv. I know we have
Marv, hold on a second before we take that call, because Marv had a comment in reference to this.
No, I just think you make a really good point, Raquel. And I think we kind of gloss over the fact that there are a lot of other college sports and schools out here that don't make $165 million a year in sports. Like my cousin, for instance, that coaches at Allen University. And I didn't think about they travel on buses and how will a university like that afford to be able to play football in this kind of climate? So I'm glad Chris brought that up, because I think we always look at a lens from a Power 5 school and schools that have money. But, Raquel brought up an interesting point about the fact that there are a lot.
Some of them
what's
won't.
that? Some of them won't. Right. Some of them just won't.
Look, the truth about this COVID situation is some of them won't. And that's unfortunate, but that's the truth. Go.
Okay. No, I'm good. I'm done. Go ahead, Raquel.
So, I think that's it. I think as parents and responsible adults, we know that those predominantly white colleges with all the money are going to choose dollars over our kids.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, when one kid dies and they die because of COVID, now your whole program is at risk. So for them, it's not even worth it. When you think about the outcome, the end result, if a kid does pass away and it's diagnosed that they had COVID, and then the trainer says, well, we tested him before practice and we told them, and that's going to happen, because if you're a star player, you're going to say, hey, you want to play? Go ahead. So it's a risk that I don't think we want to take from a business standpoint for the colleges, right? Because if a kid dies, they're going to be hit in a major way. It's not a risk that I want to take as a mother. And it's not a risk that I want to take just as a woman, knowing that there are children running up and down a field. Guys, my kid wouldn't play.
Get the caller in, man.
Yeah, well, it's not a caller, but it's a couple of Facebook comments, and one is from Poppy Griggs that is directly with this particular topic, and she says they aren't thinking about COVID-19 because it's the elderly and Black population that is affected the most. Raquel, to answer your question, no, it's not worth losing our children to the game. COVID-19 is taking people out. Then we've also got a comment from Joette Layberger, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Hi, Joette. Thank you for tuning in.
Well, and you can tell that she's somehow connected to Lee, because she says, look at my brother Lee. So proud of you. Great dialogue. Love you, man. Then we also have one from BJ Mackey that says, y'all are doing y'all thing. And it's not worth it. It's certainly not worth the lives of anybody, just from a human perspective, whether male, female, mother, father, cousin, uncle, brother. It is simply not worth the loss of life. Without life, there is no game. That's
it.
BJ Mackey, shout out, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, BJ, I was a baby when you were playing. I remember you.
Raquel, there hasn't been a current athlete, and look, I was joking about my son because you hit it on the head. I totally agree with you. But to the other side of it, and I like to get both sides of it, there hasn't been a current athlete that's currently playing sports right now that have suffered ill effects from the COVID-19 virus. Now, I don't know if that'll change in the future, but when you look at the data, there hasn't been one. So we have to throw that into the equation as well and see how it goes. But we can move on. I know, she's the moderator, Marv, and we get in trouble if we go on too long. We know that.
Right.
And,
Raquel run things.
We're gonna still talk about football, but we're gonna move on to the Houston Texans coach. Bill O'Brien says all of his players are going to take the knee. He's going to take the knee as well.
And we really need to talk about this.
At the end of the day, guys, you should have took the knee when Colin took the knee. That's when we should have rallied. We allowed a man to lose his whole career by himself, and we didn't show up for him. We allowed him to take that knee to the point of losing his entire career. And here we are now. We got to see a black man be lynched in the street. We have to see a knee on a neck in daylight for now these white coaches to say, you know what, Colin was right. He was right. But is he more right now because you actually saw a black man being lynched in the street? So is he more right now? Why wasn't he right before? Why didn't we stand with him before? So now you want to stand because you actually saw a man being killed? For me, shut up.
Yeah. I'm tired of hearing about it too.
Tell me your opinion about the coach joining his players if that happened, because that hasn't happened before. So what do you think about that, Raquel?
The coaches and the team should have joined Kaepernick. He was 4 years ahead of where we are right now.
That's fair.
He saw this then. He kneeled because of this. This is why he kneeled. So why, white America, do you have to see us being lynched before you help us, before you rally around us, before you rally with us and for us and around us? Why did it take a man having a knee in his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds? You can't hold your breath for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Why did it come to that point? Why didn't you rally with Kaepernick? We may have avoided George's death. Possibly. We may have avoided where we are right now if you would have stood with us then. He cried for help. He asked for help. He risked his whole career, and now all of a sudden you want to help us? I'm glad that you guys are now you feel the need to help us, but this has been going on in our country for forever.
I feel you.
Man, Lee, he ain't got no choice. What choice he got? He not gonna kneel? I mean, what is this statement? I'm good with my players kneeling, and I'll possibly kneel my players. What choice he got? He coach all black players that make more money than he do. And the movement is beyond his statements now. Either you with us and you kneeling, or we ain't messing with you. Like, we control your destiny as a head coach. You better get with it, or you not with us at all. That's where players are at this point. And what is he not gonna do? Not kneel? Man, you ain't saying nothing that's moving me on this subject. You better kneel. That's how it is. Because players gonna get in that locker room and they making millions and they control their own destiny, and they gonna look at him like he crazy. You can't tell me nothing no more. I don't ride with you. I'm not running through a brick wall for you because you're not down with us. So he ain't got no choice. He better kneel. And better, all these other coaches better fall in line too, because once you lose a team as a coach, it's over. And we're at a moment in time right now where this movement, it doesn't require words from them no more. They know what's going on. This is different. So if you want to coach them and you want to be able to lead these men and they ride with you, you better get on the knee. That's all I'm saying. That's where this is right now. So forget Bill O'Brien. I don't care what he's talking about, man. Whatever.
Go to the bunker, Marv. You my guy. Because you ride or die. I love it. Real quick, Raquel, I don't think there's a significance to Bill O'Brien. Let's look at Bill O'Brien's situation right now, right? Bill O'Brien traded DeAndre Hopkins, Marv, to the Arizona Cardinals. This is a make or break or get fired year for Bill O'Brien, right? And for him to come out and say that, I think he's showing unity with his players. I commend him for that. The only thing I'll say, what you commented on, Raquel, is this. I totally agree with everything that you said. But at some point now we have to fast forward it to 2020 and where we're at. And I do think the first coach coming out and saying I would kneel with my players is a significant thing. I do think that is. So we can move on.
I don't think it's significant, but I think it's necessary if he wants to have a team, as Marv said. It's not significant at all to me, but it's necessary.
Let me say this. The NFL players are only going to go so far. The NFL players are not the NBA players. Now, don't get it twisted. Now, they're going to take a knee to have some power. The NFL players, because of one thing, Raquel, you said it and you keep saying it, those contracts are not guaranteed. So they'll go so far, but they're not going to jump off the cliff the way them NBA players will.
Yeah, but we gonna find out. We gonna find out how far NBA players willing to jump pretty soon too. We gonna find out what they really talking about too.
We'll talk about
that
too.
So speaking of Antonio.
We have another comment from Facebook, and it says, Bill O'Brien gets no pass. Raquel, you're right. Where was he when Cap lost his job? Him kneeling now only makes him look as fake as he is. What does he make, $3 or $4 million a year? The players would respect him more had he spoke up. Marvin, I agree. I agree with him, and all coaches better kneel.
Can I say one thing about the players? And thank you for that last comment, but I want to address that because we have to. I think sometimes we put blinders on about how the players responded with Kaepernick in 2016. Those players, other than a few players, they left Cap out to dry. Now, let's be honest about that. We have to be honest. They left. Eric Reed and a couple other guys were right there with him, but the majority of the NFL players were looking out for themselves and getting theirs at the time, and they left Cap out to dry. So we don't, to the last Facebook post, we appreciate your call, but let's not think that back then, hell, the players weren't even half of them supporting Cap too. So we got to be honest. That's one thing I like to do is keep it honest and fair. Those players have a lot to prove in 2020 because they did abandon Cap. And a lot of them were talking about he's not talented enough. He shouldn't be in the NFL, which was totally bogus. So we have to be fair in how we look at these things. And I love what they're doing now. But 2016, it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same.
Fair enough.
So Antonio Brown, you mentioned him already.
Oh yes.
So we're gonna get a little lighter right now, guys, because the show's been pretty heavy thus far. Antonio Bryant, contract 2020. Should the NFL sign this guy? He's a free agent. Let me tell you, he's entertaining. I mean, he entertains me for sure. But man, I don't know if I would want him in my locker room, especially if I'm a top 5 team. I don't know if I want to bring that cancer into my locker room. I don't know if I want to change the continuity of my team. I don't know if I am willing to take the risk of changing something that has been built because we know what he's capable of. We've seen his actions and reactions, over the years. So for me personally, I think it's too big of a risk, especially for a top 5 team. Now, if you are, at the bottom of the totem pole, you don't have nothing to worry about. Go ahead. You don't have much to lose. Pick him up. He may change the whole atmosphere of your team, but it's too big of a risk, I think, for those teams that could really contend for the Super Bowl. I think it's too much of a risk for them, but I think for the teams that you don't have a chance, and we know who you are. Yeah, he's a very low risk for you, but he's a high risk for certain teams.
Marv.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a diehard Steelers fan. It only.
You're biased then.
Well, listen. No, it only affirms my love for Mike Tomlin for how long he dealt with this and was able to keep it under wraps of just how out there Antonio Brown was. I mean, come on. I mean, we've all seen the antics. We've all seen what goes on. I don't believe nobody, shouldn't have an opportunity to be able to continue to play a game that they love. But damn, bro, it's just gone out with a lot of stuff, man. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. And if you're a team that isn't contending for a Super Bowl or playoff spot, do you really want to take that risk? I mean, because more than likely you're building, you're trying to develop young talent, maybe a young quarterback. Is that really worth it? No. So for me, it would have to be a contender with someone who has a strong quarterback room or a strong head coach that would just be like, look, man, this is what we got. This is what you're going to do. If you do it, we good. If not, you out. I would love to see him in Kansas City. I think Kansas City would be a great spot for him. But would I sign him? Nah, man, I got to stay away from him. He too toxic right now. It's just a cancer, and you just got to kind of cut that out. The talent warrants being signed, but at this point, it's not. The risk versus reward is just not there.
Yeah. Lee.
Look at y'all. Man, I got to help my brothers and sisters because, boy, I tell you, two things. Antonio's going to get suspended for probably 2 or 3 games this upcoming season. So, to your point, Raquel, there's some baggage there. Marv, a little biased because he's still a fan. Marv, you talking all that stuff. You didn't say anything about Big Ben. He's the problem, Marv.
Well, but that's not the question. We weren't talking about Big Ben. We was talking about Antonio Brown. Okay, we'll get that another day.
Real true, but that's
we know Big Ben has issues. He's had issues for a long time, and Tom covered his issues up too.
But let me say this about AB. Great point, Marv, about a losing team. You don't want to bring him in a losing team's locker room, i.e. the Oakland Raiders can't handle it. He's going to. But let me say this. There is a reason that Tom Brady loves Antonio Brown. And let me tell you why. One, hell, prior to last year, if you look at the top receiver in the league as far as yardage and touchdown, is Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is a Hall of Famer, hands down. And
it's not about his athleticism. We all agree that the boy is dynamic.
He's still one of the best receivers in the NFL. There is no doubt about that. And I agree. I say this. Antonio Brown makes a very good team great, i.e. the Baltimore Ravens.
No, and no.
Your son's team, Raquel. I'm going to son to hoist the trophy up. So I want to give him. I love him. He's a great kid. So we want to get the Super Bowl. Baltimore Ravens sign Antonio Brown. They have that deep threat because this is what's going to happen with Baltimore this year. They're going to cheat up people to the line of scrimmage to stop Lamar running. But with an AB on there and the threat of AB outside and Hollywood Brown and those tight ends, that'll take Baltimore to the Super Bowl on the AFC side, only to lose to the Cowboys in the Super Bowl, but that's the way it is. But
the Cowboys won't make the playoffs.
You get A. Brown in Baltimore.
The Cowboys won't make the playoffs.
I'll sign them in a heartbeat.
So, okay. So we are going to jump into basketball. We have one topic that I'm not going to cover, and it was why NFL is now writing checks, Black Lives Matter. We know the answer to that. We beat that horse. We're not going to cover it today. We talked about this to no point, but we're going to have some fun now. We're going to go into the NBA. Kyrie Irving.
Real fun now. Oh, my God.
And then we're gonna start a little heavy, but we're gonna get to the fun. I promise you guys, because we're gonna give you guys our top 5 players in the NBA, and then we're gonna close out with our top 5 all time. But we're gonna talk about Kyrie Irving a little bit, and he's scheduled a conference call with a large number of NBA players, and he's gonna suggest that they not play in a racial climate. However, the group has a high profile of players that are in disagreement. I'll start with this. I don't like Kyrie Irving. I'm a huge LeBron fan. I hate how he exited from us. We still had championships, I think, with him. So I'm not an Irving fan at all. But I'll say this: he is not a leader. Hence, you can't make this demand for people to follow. we follow leaders. He is not a leader. So who is going to listen to Kyrie Irving, who's always hurt, who isn't really playing basketball?
He's part of the NBA Players Union, so that's
fine, but you need a leader to carry this. If you have a leader carry it, then you will have some of the higher profile players be in agreement. But see, you have to be a leader. Who is Kyrie? Kyrie's no one really anymore. You ask 20 people that are basketball lovers and you say Kyrie Irving, you're like, oh, okay. That's all Kyrie's gonna get from people who love basketball. And if you're a point guard, you're like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna follow him. He's not a good leader. So I think the conference call would have been better served with a real leader in the league. I think you would have gotten a little further with some of the top high profile players if someone else would have launched this conference call, like LeBron.
Well, LeBron is on record that he's down with what's going on. He's ready to play. So,
but if he would have led this charge, I bet you would have more followers.
But you know who Kyrie has on his side that is a pretty powerful voice that a lot of people don't talk about, though, is Chris Paul. That is a powerful ally that he has within that players union.
He's the president,
and let's be clear. So, last week I said, guys, I am, and Marv, you said this, and I was kind of on the fence because I really want to see basketball. I really want to see LeBron win a championship. But I agree that they should not play. I think they should affect the bottom line of all the owners, period, and make the decision. I agree with his sentiment. I just don't like, he's not leader enough to launch it. I think another leader should have launched it and you would have had more participation from higher profile players. But I'm not in disagreement with what should happen. I don't think they should play right because of what's happening, because of George, because of Brianna. I don't think they should play. I think this is where we fight back. This is what protesting is all about. But I don't like the idea that Kyrie is in front of it. Okay. We know that he'll quit when he gets mad. We know that he'll cry and leave and walk out the door when he gets mad.
Well, that's personal with Raquel, boy. She don't mess with Kyrie.
But go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and I think it's really more of and things that people don't talk about. It's more of the structure of how it's set up in Orlando. Like, what are the guidelines to how this works? I mean, it's a compound. Are you allowing families in? I mean, these men, they got families, they got people to think about, they got young children. Like, you're just going to seclude players into a compound to finish out a season just for the gain of the NBA. What if you're taking COVID back to your family? All these other things that haven't really been discussed or talked about is, I think, what Kyrie was trying to say. And it smelled a little fishy to him about how they were trying to bring it all back together and so quickly, which I agree. And again, if players make a stand not to play, them people aren't getting paid. They're not going to get paid the rest of the season, whatever the case may be. But I do think the NBA is the players are in a unique position to make a stand. And I do think the climate right now isn't conducive. To me, it feels like a distraction. Let's get basketball back to distract from what's going on. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it feels more of a distraction than something that's really being put out there that's a viable product. Come on, man. And Donovan Mitchell said it too. He's the guy's going to get hurt left and right with this. Like, this is not normal in terms of the way that they're trying to do it. So, I'm with Kyrie. I agree with Raquel. He probably wasn't the best voice to come out. When people probably started hearing Kyrie talk about it, it's like whatever. But he does have some good allies. He does have some with Chris Paul and some others that are saying the same things at this point. So, if Chris Paul talking about that, he's gonna be in LeBron head. And if he in LeBron head, then he in some other people's head. So I would hold tight with this and see where this goes. I don't think we've heard the end of this.
Lee.
Okay, first of all, why don't you like Uncle Drew? That's what I want to know.
Uncle Drew's soft, man. He's soft.
And I'll say this. I've already told you some of the reasons, and there's one or two other reasons I can't say live.
First of all, I'm going to take care of you, Raquel. If it wasn't for Kyrie Irving, let's be honest, Cleveland would have won that championship against Golden State. Get that man, put some respect on his name. 37 points in the closeout game.
I don't think you heard me. I said, nope, I'm not going to let you finish. I don't think you heard me. Kyrie was very important to the team. We had more championships with Kyrie in Cleveland. I'm not disregarding his skill, although it's not what it used to be. He's always hurt. He's not worth the money anymore. But yes, when he played with LeBron, he was at his best, and now we see him barely making it.
I mean, Lee, remember LeBron almost averaged a triple double in that series, man. Let's not forget about that. But we know. Hold on. We know this is a what have you done for me lately league, right? What has Kyrie done since then? He's not a leader.
Nothing.
He's been injured, Marv. We know that Kyrie's been hurt. Let me say this about Kyrie Irving.
For the rest of his career, he'll be hurt.
Kyrie Irving, okay, and I'm gonna go to the future. Marv, you're telling me that the New Jersey Nets don't have championships in their future?
No.
Kyrie,
no.
Are going to win championships.
No. About that. Kyrie Irving is a bad man. Look, I get what you're saying about Kyrie. He's been a little injury prone. I get that. That's going to be the rest of his career. I don't know if it's the rest of his career.
Kyrie coming off a shoulder, reconstructive shoulder. KD coming off an Achilles at 31 now? Now, KD can score in his sleep, but he won't be the same KD. He won't be the same KD. You got Philadelphia. You got Boston. You got a lot of teams in the East that are
juggernauts.
The Nets will be the representative out of the East, not this.
Man, somebody please make sure this is recorded so we can remember the time and the day that we were in.
Mark, call your boys because I'm telling you the Nets will be the representative next year. But let me say this about Kyrie and Colin. Look, Kyrie's not going to play, so he can voice his opinion because he's already said he's not going to play if they come back. I, again, disagree with it. I think you're right, Marv. The setup is more of the issue as far as them.
Right.
The NBA has enough money to do the testing and make sure that the players are safe. You know, bringing the families in after the second round of the playoffs, that's kind of messed up as well. So yeah. Marv, they're going to do 3 weeks of training camp. Now, I get it. They stopped playing, and we don't know how healthy these players are, but they are going to get 3 weeks of training camp. You can comment on that a little better than I can, but the starting and the stopping is a concern. But you know, you're going to get 3 weeks of training camp, play 8 games, and then go into the playoffs. I want them to play. That's all I can say. Y'all quit talking about Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, Uncle Drew is a bad man.
We do have a comment from Facebook. We do have a comment.
Lamondre, I'm sorry, we have somebody.
Yeah, from Facebook. It's BJ Mackey. He says, a little injury prone? ? And then BJ Mackey also says, no athlete.
BJ.
BJ also says, no athlete has ever come back and played to elite status after an Achilles.
BJ.
Thank you.
BJ. Hey,
I like BJ. BJ, you know what? You're all right with me, bro.
And BJ, you were a great ball player. I remember you, bro. And we want you on the show. Mark, hook him up because I got some things for him. But BJ, think Dominique Wilkins. Don't tell me Dominique didn't come back from an Achilles and average 26, 27 points a game.
Different league.
Can be done. Dominique Wilkins came back and was the high flyer that he always was after he injured his Achilles. Come on now. It happened. And Marv, KD is a jump shooter that can get his shot off in his sleep. So
look, I said that. I said he's a professional scorer. But KD did a lot of things for that Golden State team that people don't talk about. His defensive game, laterally blocking a lot of shots. He did a lot of things that people don't talk about.
He will not be able to do again. Defense, so you'll see the difference in him on defense. I agree. He's going to be able to score. He's a scorer. That's who he is. That's what he is. But when you start to see that lateral movement up and down the court, defense, transition basketball, that's when you're going to see he's a different guy.
See some of the YouTube and Instagram posts of Kevin Durant. The man is running like a gazelle, and they have DeAndre Hopkins to protect the basket, something that Golden State.
Hey, you know what? I'm going to make one more comment on KD. We ain't seen KD carry a team to a title, though. He had a lot of help. I'll never respect KD when you had Golden State on the ropes and you can't finish the deal with Westbrook. You leave, you go to Golden State. Don't give me this about no KD.
He is a Kyrie. Him and
Yeah,
Kyrie are the same.
So that's why they're together.
Yes, and they can stay together. I hope they do because they're not going to win together.
And my dog out there, BJ Mackey, you know what we talking about. He ain't got that dog in him. We all know that, and he gonna get what he gets.
He's a two-time champion any way you look at it, and he's a two-time MVP. You can't take that away from him.
Yeah, with 7 Hall of Famers playing with him. He played with 7 Hall of Famers. So, hey guys,
there you go, right there.
You are delusional about this, but I'm going to say this. I want to know your top 5 NBA players that are playing right now. I don't know if you guys have them, but I'm gonna go because I got my top 5.
All right, go.
No doubt about it. LeBron's my number 1. He's my number 1 all time. He's my number 1 playing. Genesis is next. Kawhi, Paul George, Anthony Davis.
Okay, let me roll mine off real quick. I'm gonna go with Klay Thompson at number 5. I know that might, but listen, Klay is consistent. He give it to you on both ends every night. He's usually not injury prone. You know the little knee injury but he's usually playing every game. Klay Thompson gives you everything he got, and he can shoot the hell out of the basketball. I'm probably gonna go with Anthony Davis at 4. Just because of what he brings to the table, diversity, all the things he can do on the basketball court. I'm going to go with Kawhi at number 3. I mean, Kawhi speaks for himself. I don't got to go into that. I'm going to go Greek Freak number 2. Once he learn how to shoot a jump shot, you can forget it. It's over. He gonna win 10 titles. Maybe not that many. But once he learn how to shoot a jump shot and diversify his game a little bit, there's nothing anybody can do with him. And right now, we still got LeBron at number 1.
Hey, you know what? We might as well be brothers and sisters. I'm telling you.
It is.
Yeah, we have to correct the brother and sister team sometimes. But look. We all are pretty. Look, number 1, LeBron. I'm with you there with LeBron. Number 2 is Giannis. Giannis, and Marv, you said it. As his shot developed, and before the season stopped, Giannis was hitting threes.
He was.
Well for his game come playoff time because when Toronto had the blueprint, they packed it in, not let him drive to the basket, and that was it. But he's hitting threes. That's going to help him. But number 3, Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, he's my number 3. The only reason Anthony Davis is not 2 is some of the things y'all said about the injuries. He gets nicked up so much, it's just unreal. I mean, he'll be in the game, and if he falls, there he goes to the bench. He'll be out for 2 or 3 games. But come on. 4 and 5, y'all will be. Did I hear Kawhi Leonard from any one of you guys?
I said Kawhi was 3 for me.
Okay. Kawhi's my number 4.
Kawhi's my number 3.
And my number 5 is James Harden. Come on, man.
Oh, man.
James Harden is the Olympic scorer.
I love Paul George's game, so I couldn't leave Paul out.
There's nobody that can guard James Harden in the NBA. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but he can't guard nobody either.
He can't guard nobody either.
I mean, he'll give you 40 and give up 35 on the other end. I mean,
right.
Man, plus minus is terrible, man.
Who's your 5th? Who did I miss with you, Mark?
Klay Thompson was my 5th.
Klay
Thompson? Oh, my God.
Come on, man. You can't go sleep on Klay.
Klay's a bad boy. I love Klay's ability to score, but Klay, come on, man. You can shut Klay down. Get up and crowd and make Klay put the ball.
Nah, that's the great thing about. But that's the great. Hold on, Lee. That's the beauty about Klay Thompson. He don't have to have the basketball to score. James gotta have the ball to score hard. He gotta have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see when Klay had 30? Did you see when Klay had 30 in that game in 1 quarter? He took 2 dribbles in that quarter.
James Harden led the league in assists as well, Mark. Come on now.
Because he got the ball all the time.
Yeah, but he's an assist. Klay Thompson, if you crowd him and make him put the ball on the floor, he's a liability. Who was your 5th person?
Liability.
So my fifth person was Anthony Davis, but I think where we differ, I have Paul George on my list. I love Paul George.
Injury.
Paul George, you talk about can't seal the deal. Last year with Russell Westbrook, the man disappeared in the playoffs, and he got swept in the first round. Well, Paul George, no way with Paul George.
Paul George is up. I love Paul's game. I think it's flawed. I mean, him and Anthony Davis, if he wasn't so accident prone, would be higher on my list. If he didn't have so many injuries, but and I botched Giannis's name earlier, but he is scary to me. Giannis is scary to me. No, Giannis. Giannis is scary to me. He is a freak of nature, much like my man LeBron. I'm looking forward to just seeing his career.
Next year, that man comes back. He'll go back to the top, I believe, Kevin Durant. Remember that.
Man, Kevin Durant is done.
Come on, Mark.
All
right, guys. So let's shift. Do we have any callers or comments, Lamondre?
We do. We've got a comment, 2 comments from Facebook. BJ Mackey is giving his 5. He has Kawhi, Bron, Giannis, Davis, and Jokic. And then King Mook says, Paul George used to be nice.
Used to be. Thank you.
Used to be. All right. I won't argue with that, guys. So we got another one. Stay on with us. We have now the top 5 shooting guards. Who are your top 5 shooting guards? All time. All right. Number 1.
Oh, we doing all time. I thought we was doing right now. We doing all time?
All time.
Oh, Lord.
I'll give you some time to get yourself together. Lee and I'll go. You get your list together. My number 1 is Jordan, no doubt about it. Kobe Bryant, number 2. Dwayne Wade, number 3. Ray Allen, number 4. Reggie Miller, number 5.
Oh, God. I was with you there for a while, Raquel. Then again, you put me to sleep with them last 2. Let me give you mine. You did a good job. That shows you know a little something, but I'm going to help you out here. Number 1, Jordan, of course. Number 2, Kobe. Number 3, Dwayne Wade. Number 4, Allen Iverson.
No.
Number 5, the Iceman, George Gervin. That's who's number 5. Talk to me, DJ Mackey. Talk to me about George Gervin.
You know, Louis, I'm with your list. There's one person, though, that we forgetting about that might be in this conversation that people are talking about. What about Tracy McGrady?
He didn't play long enough for me.
He didn't play long enough?
He didn't play long enough. I think he had the possibility to be one of the greats, in all honesty. Him and Penny Hardaway. I think Penny and McGrady had
Mark, do you consider him a 2 or a small forward, though?
That's what I don't know. You know, that he's kind of in a conversation with me with Bernard King. Like, are they 3s or are they 2s? I'm not real sure. But Lee, I'm with you. Both of your lists are pretty on point, though. I can't really.
See, Raquel, look, that Iceman was something else. 7 scoring titles. You know, scoring 70 points in a game.
Ray Allen, one of the best shooters of all time, in my opinion. Ray Allen. Ray Allen. I mean, he's a pleasure to watch. Great teammate. Always gave everything he had, and he shot the ball well. Even when he was an old man, he shot the ball well. His whole career, he shot the basketball. And then, Reggie Miller. Come on, guys. Like, if it wasn't for Michael Jordan, Reggie would have had a championship.
He would have. Do we leave out Manu?
They had a better team than Chicago, 1 through 15, and they couldn't close the deal. Forget Reggie Miller. He only averaged 19 points a game as his career. He's a good shooter, but that's it. I don't like Reggie Miller.
You don't like Reggie?
What about Ginobili? Where he standing this?
Manu was bad. Mama, I put him in my 6-man comment, a greatest 6-man of all time, because I think coming off the bench, he was much better than when they put him in the starting lineup. I like Ginobili though. Ginobili has.
Does Drazen Petrovic get in this conversation if he doesn't pass away?
He was bad, Marv. He was bad.
Yeah, he was good. I was looking at his stat line, and obviously that's before my time, and I thought, yeah. So, hey, we have come to the end of the show.
AI was the man. He never had any help. AI was the man.
Allen Iverson is one of my favorite players, but I kind of put him more in the 1 category versus the 2 category, in all honesty. I know he's listed as a 2 guard, but he handled the ball so much.
Oh, yeah. He had the ball a lot.
The ball
like James Harden.
Correct. So I kind of put him in a point guard bucket versus a shooting guard bucket, but AI is one of my top all-time favorites. Jordan, LeBron, AI. I'm not a Kobe fan, never been a Kobe fan. Wade. So, he's in my top favorite of all time, but I just don't put him in a shooting guard bracket. I put him in a 1 guard bracket. But hey, today was a great show. A lot of great content.
I was just getting warmed up. Oh
It's been a 2-hour show almost, you know. But hey, we appreciate you guys for tuning in with us. We have so much fun when we do this. Share with your friends. Call in next week. We'll be back. We're going to do it all over again. Make sure you check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We are After the Buzzers Sport Podcast. It was a good time. Lee, Marv, until next time.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you. Tell a friend. Tell a friend.
Tell a friend.
BJ Mackey, much love, brother.
Yeah, BJ, you all right with me.
Come on the show, BJ.